Well, I'm Marty Gilbert, and I just want to welcome all of you to this job search Q&A session. I do LinkedIn Lives usually about every 3 or 4 weeks, and try to dedicate, one of them every so often to just people randomly asking me questions about job search related activities and to share my perspectives. Okay, there's no one right way to go through your job search, but there are many avenues that can help get you that next job a lot quicker. And that's exactly what the North Shore Executive Networking Group is all about. So before we get into the specific questions, let me just share with you a few things with regard to NSE&G. NSE&G, or the North Shore Executive Networking Group, is the largest job search group in the United States. We have more than 11,500 members to date. The membership is absolutely free. You just go to the website at nseinc.com, and you're going to get access immediately to not only all of our members, but you're going to get 2 free webinar recordings from me, one of which is about how to shorten your job search. Of course, the folks that are members of this group, have great backgrounds and great opportunities for networking so that you can get into some companies through them that you otherwise could not do on your own. We also have a LinkedIn group, and I urge you to join that as well. We've got about 7,900 folks of the membership that are a part of our LinkedIn group, and it's a very safe place in which to ask questions of other people that might be in the same or similar predicament as yourself. We have a tremendous number of resources. I have a library of 17 on-demand webinar recordings on all different aspects of job search, from ghosting to age discrimination to cover letters and beyond. So please take a look at this in the job search resources section of the website. Each one of those are 90 minutes in length. I also have three 3-hour on-demand workshop recordings. Okay, the first one is my trademarked "What the Hell" approach to job search. I applied with the U.S. Patent Department and received a trademark for this unique approach. It's very much a marketing-driven approach. I've got 13 what the hell moves that can help create a lot more visibility, credibility, and in the end, get you more interviews than taking traditional steps. I have a separate one for maximizing the value of LinkedIn during your job search. And this is a great one that is divided up into 2 sections. The first is how to optimize your profile, and the second half of that session is on how to really use the platform and the database to find more companies, more people, and influencers that can help, again, shorten that time frame to get to your next job. And the third one is on creating a job search plan. Like any job, you've got to have a plan, got to know what you're going to do, what the priorities are, and I take you through that during that 3-hour session. I also have a pretty significant coaching business. It's the biggest part of what NSE&G does. There are coaching packages, and there are one-on-one custom coaching services that I can tailor to whatever your needs might be. So if considering, the potential outside help of a coach is something that might be of interest to you, I'm happy to have a complimentary exploratory call with you. Just email me at mgilbert@nseinc.com. If you want to hear and see the posts that I put out on LinkedIn regularly, usually about 3 times a week, go to my profile and click on that bell, and then you'll be notified every time I put some content out there. The next upcoming event is going to be on Wednesday, July 17th, and it's going to be about how to market yourself to your next job. 90% of the job search is marketing. It's messaging, positioning, packaging, targeting, and creating an outbound marketing campaign that gets you a lot more visibility than sitting back and answering online ads. It also, talks and speaks to the issue of writing in and getting your visibility known within companies that don't have advertised jobs, because at any point in time, 30 or 40% of the jobs are not sitting on LinkedIn or Indeed or Career Builder or any of these other aggregation sites. So I urge you to go ahead and take a look at this upcoming event that will take place on the 17th of July. For those of you that happen to live in the state of Illinois, I do partner with an Illinois-based training company that is WIOA approved, WIOA. It stands for Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. This is a huge chunk of money that has been set aside every year by the U.S. government for job seekers to get training. We know that oftentimes there might be things that are missing in your background that can be addressed through training. What's really nice about this program and Microtrain, the company that I partner with, is that anybody who lives in the state of Illinois, and there are other companies like Microtrain scattered across all major cities in the United States, you can apply for a WIOA grant, and it may be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. Now, they'll conduct the training for you, and they'll do it for free because they're going to get paid from the money that's sitting there with the government. And that means that they can pass along the training for you at absolutely no cost to you, up to $10,000 worth of training. So I've had probably close to about 150 members within NSE&G get training from Microtrain. And believe me, it will give you more credibility to have certain kinds of licenses or certificates. It speaks to Lean Six Sigma, ChatGPT, any of the hot technical aspects and software that are out there today. Just go to their website, microtrain.net/NSE&G. This is a special landing page that's been set up for my members. But again, if you don't live in Illinois, not to worry, there are other companies that you can Google that are in other states that would do work that's similar to what Microtrain does. So let's just start now by opening it up to questions. I just have one request of all of you. If you do have a question, please put the word question in all caps and then ask your question. Just add that onto it because I know that some of you are going to be networking in the chat. But for those of you that want to ask some questions, again, just put the words question and then go ahead and type out your question. The simpler or shorter you can keep it, the easier it will be for me to respond to it. So there's the only requirement is that the questions should be related to job search. So let's take a look. I did get quite a few emails of people that sent some questions into me relative to their job search. So let me take a quick look here. Here's a question and a situation. I've sent invitations to people on this call and they don't check their LinkedIn messages or respond to them. Could you encourage people to check their messages? Great. Thank you for sharing that. And absolutely, everybody who's on this call either is in a job search or is not happy with where they're working and are looking to make a change. So you're all in the same boat. The important thing here is that you all have the ability to help one another. And that's important because some of the greatest leads and opportunities are going to come from people that you did not know before you started your job search. It's going to come from a complete stranger who you now have added into your network. So please, go ahead and interact with anybody in this group. Here's a question that came in. Do you have a template or suggested wording for cold outreach emails to target companies when they say that they don't have for those that don't have a published job available? Yes, I do. And in fact, I'm a huge advocate of email cover letters because they do what a resume and a LinkedIn profile cannot do. They enable you to control the story and control exactly what you want them to see and hear about you. The fact is that there's been many studies done about cover letters. And in the most recent one that I came across said that 83% of hiring managers like getting a cover letter. Why do they like that? And that's really just an email with your resume attached. They like it because they want to see how you communicate. Okay, communication is such a big part of every job. And the fact is that if you can be very persuasive without getting too long-winded, that email cover letter can be hugely advantageous because you're going to be tying specific things in your background that you've done that are relevant to that position that you're trying to fill. And people will identify with that. Storytelling is such a big part of the job search, and your ability to tell stories not only in interviews, but in email cover letters can open up a lot of opportunities. For those of you that are interested, on the NSE&G website, there is a 90-minute recording of me presenting over PowerPoint slides on resumes tell, but cover letters sell. And during that session, I teach people how to write highly customized cover letters in less than 10 minutes. And that's important because I know one of the reasons a lot of people don't write them because they tell me it takes them 2 hours or more just to customize each one to a given job or to a given company that doesn't have a job. Not to worry, check out the webinar recording, and I think you'll find that it's a format that you can follow. Speaking of which, here's an email that was sent into me earlier, should my resume and LinkedIn profile be identical? They should be very similar, but they don't have to be absolutely identical. And here's why. Here's the difference between a resume and a LinkedIn profile. The resume is really a copywriter's challenge. How do I say all of the right things in my resume without that resume getting too long? Okay. And there's nothing that says that resumes have to be one page. Okay. If you've got 5 years or more of experience, chances are you're going to have at least 2 pages. But I also urge you not to have more than 3, just because, it begins to dilute the bullet point achievements in your background that should and you would like to have more visibility to. So if you're sending out, a resume to folks, what you want to do is LinkedIn is such a great tool for identifying who are the right people to get that email out to. Okay, because you can find people by title, by company, by industry, by geographic location. And if you know how to use the platform, it can answer all the questions in terms of who are the people that I want to be communicating to, whether they're at the manager level, director, VP, or C-suite. So again, you can take a look at the 3-hour 3-hour recording that I have on maximizing the value of LinkedIn during your job search. Here's a question that was just chatted in. Should we be concerned that the ATS, or applicant tracking system, is not reading our resumes properly and therefore we are not considered? Well, a lot of people are very concerned about applicant tracking systems, and it's nothing more than a piece of software that sits on the other end when you apply to a job. A lot of recruiters use them. A lot of companies are using them as a quick way to get down to the 3, 4, or 5 best candidates. And by the way, most good jobs that are advertised are getting at least 100 people responding to them. And I've got people that have, that I communicate with that tell me that they're seeing as many as 100 within 30 minutes of the job being posted on LinkedIn, for example. So this question should be concerned about the ATS. Yeah, you should be, but you only need to have a ATS version of your resume if you are uploading it onto a website and they do not allow you to upload a PDF. In that case, you're going to have a separate version of your resume in a Word document, and it's going to avoid things like italics, color, any charts. And there is no one format that ATSs are being utilized in. They come in many different flavors and they can be programmed in many different things. So the problem is that you never know what ATS is sitting on the other side of your application, and whether or not bolding can or cannot be read, and whether or not hyperlinks can or cannot be read. My feeling is have a text, rich text version of your resume separately, but you're only going to need to use it when they do not allow you to upload a PDF. And in terms of cold outreach, I would use, your standard, nice looking resume. They can view it in a PDF, and it should be able to, demonstrate to them, the things that are important to you, but the things that you can bring to the table. Here's a question that was chatted in. What's the best way to prepare for an interview with team members after you've already met with the hiring manager? Great question. The fact is that many of you, and I would guess that almost every person on this call, when they go into an interview, there's not one single person only who's going to be doing interviewing, or only one person who's going to make the decision. It's typically going to be a team of people. So if you're applying to, say, a sales job, well, yeah, you'll interview with the hiring manager, who likely might be the director or VP of sales. But you will probably have also interviews with maybe somebody who's senior in marketing, operations, product development, maybe even finance, and somebody on the front end from HR talent acquisition. But it's important to to understand things from their perspective, because what's important to the sales manager that you may be looking for may be very different from the person in finance. Their views and perspectives on the company may be very different. So it's important to talk to some people who have roles in finance, operations, marketing, to find out what's important to them. Okay, you're not going to be able to ask these people in advance, but one good thing that you should ask right at the beginning of any one of these interviews is, what are the 3 biggest challenges facing the individual moving into this position? And the moment they respond to that, you've got the answers to the test for each one of them. And now, if you're well prepared for an interview, you can pivot between those different topics because they've told you, you know what? The person who's going to get this job and that I'm going to support is the person who can address these three challenges that I have, which may be very different from what somebody in operations or finance or sales or marketing might have, which is okay. But it's great to get that information at the beginning of the interview so that you can be able to tailor some of your responses to the things that they've just told you are going to be paramount in their decision-making process. Here's another question that was chatted in. Can you please address your thoughts on employment gaps and how it is perceived by employers? Employment gaps are received by employers today much better than they ever have been, if for no other reason because of COVID-19. There have been people that have been out of work for 1-2 years at a time, and it's a lot more accepted. Okay, and a lot of people recognize that people are let go because the company had to make all kinds of cutbacks because of the problems in their businesses and their challenges that they were facing, and oftentimes really talented people are a part of that reduction in force. So I urge you to, and again, how do you address those gaps? Well, you've got to be open and honest with people. Okay, but what you don't want to do is be a complainer. You can't be a complainer who's complaining. Well, my boss, I got crossways with my boss and it got very political and this and that. You don't want to introduce those kinds of topics that are highly negative into the interview process, because what the person on the receiving end is thinking, you know what, someday they could be complaining about me. So the last thing you want is to come across as a difficult employee, but it is important, to have, if you've got a gap in your background, be honest about it, okay, and explain to them what happened. I think they will more times than not appreciate what you were up against. But the political environment is not always the best answer for something like this. It might be cost savings, it might be reduction in turnaround time. Any number of things, and that's where you've got to take a look at yourself and make a good understanding as to what it was that led to your leaving the company. Here's a question that has been chatted in. Well, let's see here. What are your best tips for networking in an area where I am a relative newcomer? I've recently been laid off and let go in April. Okay, so having industry experience always gives a candidate a leg up on people who don't have that industry knowledge, okay? And this is especially true of individuals who are in customer-facing roles, sales, marketing, maybe product development or product management, not the technical folks, but the brand or product managers. Because having the knowledge of the industry means that you can hit the road a lot faster. So if you're in one of those areas, I urge you to spend your time first going after companies that come from the industries where you bring that experience. For many other positions, like maybe HR, maybe code writing, software, IT, maybe even operations, not having that industry knowledge isn't going to be as critical as it will be for sales, marketing, and product management. So that's why I say, the easiest way that companies, can eliminate candidates other than not being qualified for the job is if they are not an industry fit. So it's always in your best interest, from my perspective, to start first where the industries where you bring stories and experience, and I think you'll see that you're going to get a better hit rate. Here's another question that was chatted in. Would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. It's helpful. So anybody on this call, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you already are not. Just explain, in your message, I attended your session and would love to connect with you. I've got 30,000 LinkedIn connections. I can give you a connectivity to a lot of people. I don't know 28,000 of those people probably. I probably never met them face to face, but that's okay. At least I can give you visibility to folks that are in my network. So that takes care of that question. How should a lengthy employment gap appear on your resume? So I think that if you've been out of work for 9, 12 or more months, you're going to show a finish date to your last job. Okay, and that's the way your resume is going to be. Now, I am a big advocate of people going after project work and going after opportunities that might be temporary because it gets you back in the game. You can now say that you're employed. But if you've got a huge gap, again, this question was kind of asked earlier, you've got to be open and honest with people. But one thing that you can do is start to take on project work. Let people know that you're open to, not just full-time opportunities, but also to part-time or project work, because a lot of these companies are looking for immediate solutions. That's why they're advertising for a position, but they don't oftentimes find the person in a reasonable amount of time. That creates an opportunity for somebody to come in on a temporary basis and do some project work. And if you do well on the projects, they may decide, we need to keep her. We can't let her go. Okay, we're going to create a new role for someone like this. So here's a question that was chatted in. What are the key areas in the job description to be considered when tailoring the resume, and what are the areas in the resume to be considered to be changed? Okay, this is a really helpful question. When it comes to job descriptions, typically on a job description, up at the top portion, they may talk a little bit about the company, but immediately after that, they're talking about the key requirements of that job. What's this job going to involve? Those are the important sections. The qualifications that typically sit at the bottom are far less important because whether or not you have the experience level. But being able to tie specific stories in your resume and in your LinkedIn profile and during interviews is hugely important, because they want to know that you've been there and you've done that. And great stories go a long way, but they don't have to be long-winded, right? This is the art of copywriting, and it's one of the things that in a resume, you've got to be able to have bullet points that are in many cases no more than 2 lines long, but they should explain in very few words what was the challenge you faced, what were the actions you took, and what was the impact or results of your actions. And that's what makes for a strong resume, makes for a strong cover letter, makes for a really intriguing resume and LinkedIn profile. So in a bullet point resume, what amount of quantitative results should be included? Essentially, metrics, right? So good question. The more metrics you have, the stronger I believe your resume becomes, because it's the proof behind the claims you make. It's not enough to say that I've got 15 years of experience doing lead generation. Tell me, how many leads were you generating on a monthly basis? What was the conversion rate for those leads? Where were you, finding and creating these leads? Okay, whether it was online, offline, through direct mail. This is an opportunity for you to brag, but you can also, if you have metrics associated with your work history, don't hide them. Put them in there if they're good and respectable. And so I'm a big believer in numbers that tell and numbers that sell. And so this is really important to include in your resume and in your LinkedIn profile. Here's a question. How long is the average job search now? Does it depend on the industry? I'm going to say, yes, it can depend on the industry. Certain industries are hotter than others, right? Software as a service, very hot. Cybersecurity, very hot. Healthcare, hot. So my guess is that those searches are taking less time because there's more opportunities for people. And there's a list of many, many more as well. But what I'm finding for people that have been in the workforce for, say, 7 or more years, the average length of time to land your next job, and specifically a job that you want, not just to get a job, is probably taking somewhere between 4 and 7 months. I know that may be very discouraging for many of you, and believe me, I've seen people that have gotten jobs within a couple weeks. Okay, timing is a big part of that, but this is where the cover letter can get you the interviews that you might not otherwise get because of your resume or your profile. You've got to get something that makes people understanding, the value you can bring and the kind of problems that you can solve for them. So again, you've got to have the stories that tell the difference. Here's a question that was sent in a bullet point resume. What amount of I think that's the one I just answered. Okay. Here's a question that was emailed into me. How long should a resume be, and how far back in my experience should I go? I've been working for 23 years. And my general attitude toward this is I know that some people are concerned or have been told by somebody, never go back more than 15 years. But if you've had some great jobs that were 20 years ago or more that you think add value to your candidacy, then there's no reason to hide it. Okay. People will eventually figure out what your age is one way or another during the interview process. But, when I was in job searches, I always went all the way back because one of the most interesting jobs I had in my career was working in Japan when I was working for the largest advertising agency in the world, a company by the name of Dentsu. There were 6,000 people in the company, but only 5 of us were not Japanese. And that, that really told potential employers that I'm not a typical individual with a very standard background. And it raised a lot of very interesting and intriguing conversations. So again, magic number is that you don't have to have a one-page resume, but on the other side, I wouldn't go beyond 3. I think it just gets overwhelming. But if you have great jobs that you had that were 18, 20, 23 or more years ago that you think will help your cause, include them. Here's a question that was just chatted in. Should you end your last job on LinkedIn while in transition, or keep it as your present job for search analytics? Yeah, great, good question. This is very much a judgment call. When you are let go, or if you decided to leave your last employer, I feel that there's sort of a grace period. Okay, I don't think that people necessarily expect that the next day, the next week, you're going to show an end date on your LinkedIn profile. But certainly on your resume, you're going to show that you are unemployed, and you'll have an end date. But for purposes of LinkedIn, we all know that search engine optimization is a big part of this. And if you don't, LinkedIn does not treat all people equally. If you are showing yourself as having an end date, which means you're currently unemployed, they may not display your background as readily to people that are currently employed. There's a lot of stereotyping that unfortunately job seekers have to deal with, and ageism is one of them and unemployment is another. But I feel that on your LinkedIn profile, that I think you can get away on many occasions with keeping a couple months up there, even though you haven't been working there, and you can explain that during the interview that you hopefully will get as a result of this. But when the time comes where you say, you know what, it's now been 3 months, I haven't been working, I think I need to put out there on my profile that I do have an end date, but then put a current job. And that current job is, I'm currently looking for my next career opportunity, open to both full-time and part-time or project work. This way you have a current job, even though, hey, let's face it, job hunting can be a lot more difficult than any job that some of you may have had historically. So that's one way to, sort of trick the system within LinkedIn by showing you have a present position, but that present position is that you're in a job search. Perfectly fine. Let's see here. Here's a question that came in on the chat. Okay. Please address your opinion about assessment tests and tips on passing them. Yeah, there's a lot of companies that use some sort of an assessment test, whether the position is in marketing, administrative assistant, or sales. Some of them have obviously for many years had personality tests to see whether or not you fit the mold of the kind of person that they're looking for this specific question or this specific position. You can't trick these things. And, I was oftentimes, not a very strong believer in assessment tests, because my feeling is what you can learn from a one-on-one conversation is far more valuable than somebody taking a test. And there are people that are just inherently bad test takers, right? They get nervous. They're trying to overthink the questions. So my feeling is, hey, for this individual, I don't know that there's anything you can do to prepare. You could potentially Google assessment tests to see what kind of tests are out there, but they're designed in a way that that you can't do a lot of preparation for. My feeling is, be yourself. You got to be very genuine, because you are going to be working there if they make you an offer, and you want to make sure that they're getting the person that that depicted themselves that specific way during the interview process. Here's a question that came in. Do you recommend placing skills up front on a resume or starting with the work experience? This is a good one. You're going to have your contact information up on the top of your resume, and immediately under that will either be your branding statement or a statement that helps people understand you're a sales leader, you're a marketing manager, you're in operations development, whatever it might be, because people need to know that you fit a specific category of job or jobs. Underneath that is going to then be your value proposition summary, and that's typically going to be 70 to 90 words, depending upon your level of experience. But the fact is that you then want to get right into your experience. But the one thing that I do encourage people to do on their resume is below the value proposition, list out about 9 of your key competencies. These can be a 3x3, 3 rows, 3 columns. List out some keywords or key phrases there that help people piece together your areas of strength. And then you want to go right into your most recent job. That should never take you further than halfway down the page to get to that most recent job. But I think putting in some of the right keywords or key phrases is a good idea, but place it underneath the value proposition and just before your most recent position. Here's a question. When looking at additional training classes and certifications, are free classes looked at any differently on a resume than paid classes? I don't believe so, because and I see this in so many resumes. You can only say Six Sigma certification or PMP certification or a license on some technical skill. People don't care whether you paid for it or it was paid by somebody else who was part of was a WIOA training company. So I wouldn't worry about whether or not the training was free. Was the training good? Okay, did the training help you understand something that you weren't using in the past? Here's a question that was chatted in. I've had 18 to 23 years of experience at some of the biggest top companies in the world, and it has still taken a long time to find work. Just part of the hunt, right? But I find dedicating 40 hours a week looking for help is something I'm also doing. So you're not alone. Okay, there are many people, and looking for a job is at least a 40-hour a week endeavor. And the fact is that oftentimes, if you don't have a connection into the company, you are going to be at a disadvantage. This is why networking and always building out your LinkedIn connections is so important, because the chances of you having somebody who might be a first or second degree connection to you might give you an entree into a company that you have no visibility with on your own. We know that so many companies are paying their employees typically somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 if they recommend a candidate and that candidate ends up getting hired. Why do companies do this? Well, it's not terribly expensive, but who better to determine the fit into the company culture than somebody who's already working there? And so while you may not have a direct connection of somebody who's working in a firm that's of interest to you, you may have somebody who's connected to somebody, a secondary connection that might be working there. And these people can then make an introduction into that secondary connection for you. And absolutely, you want to leverage those kinds of things. Here's a follow-up question. How far back should I go on my resume? Many companies don't allow you to add information beyond a certain year when applying for their career sites. Well, if companies put a restriction on how far back you can go, then that's as far back as you can. But again, I'll make the same comment. If you have some positions that were 18, 20 or more years ago that you think make you a stronger candidate, then there's no reason to hide it. There's no reason to hide it. Here's a question. Is it okay to say you left a job when you were terminated unjustly? Okay, and there are a lot of unjust terminations that take place. It's okay to say that you left the company, but if you were terminated, then I think you have to be clear with them that it was not your decision. Okay, well, because one of the things that companies are going to do is if you become a finalist, they're going to go back potentially to some of your employers. In certain states, they cannot ask why you were terminated, but they can ask what was your start and end date. They may be able to ask what your job title is. But again, state by state, the laws may be different, and they may be able to get in a conversation with somebody about, was this person fired or was this person somebody who left on their own accord? So I think to avoid a potential problem down the road, I encourage you to just be very open and honest with whether or not this was a termination or your decision to leave. Again, I've gotten a number of emails that were sent in. Let me just cover a couple of these. I keep getting rejection emails from the applicant tracking system or no response at all. What am I doing wrong? The fact is, if you don't get a response from the applicant tracking system, it might be that the format of your resume was not readable. And that happens. I get and hear from a lot of people who get rejected in 15, 20 minutes from an applicant tracking system, which it's good that they're hearing back. It's not good because it's not the news they wanted. But the fact is that I have coached so many people who have been rejected by the applicant tracking system and have still been able to get them interviews because we go to the right people in the company. Who are they? It's the hiring manager and that person's peers and that person if they have a boss. And that's where using LinkedIn as a way to identify these people is so helpful, because you can find them if you know how to use the platform. Again, by geography, by title, by company name, by industry. These are all variables that you can throw into the mix to find the right person. So even if you apply and get rejected, it's not game over. To me, the game starts once you've sent out 3, 4, or 5 emails to different people inside that company that has a job, or people and companies that don't have a job, because there's such a high percentage of companies that don't use LinkedIn or Career Builder or Indeed, to advertise positions, and you want to get visibility with them. So, my feeling is, don't leave any stone unturned, and sending out email cover letters and a marketing campaign to support your candidacy can open up doors and opportunities in a much bigger way than simply answering online ads and hoping for the best. There's another question that was sent in here that I really like. How can I measure the effectiveness of my job search other than eventually getting a job offer? Are there job search metrics that I should have? One of the hardest things for a job seeker is for the job seeker to determine, how well am I doing in my job search? Because you can be making great progress and not necessarily getting interviews. But the fact is that you can't get a job without having interviewed. So some of the metrics that will help feed getting more and more interviews: how many email cover letters did you send out each week? How many new companies did you add to your target company list? How many networking conversations did you have? Set a goal and you might have 3, you might have 5, different goals and objectives, which is perfectly fine. But track them from week to week and see how you're doing. These may be good, indicators to help you see what is feeding the interview process for me. Because I'm doing more of this as opposed to that, I saw that I was getting a lot more activity. So, again, and everybody should be increasing their LinkedIn connections all the time. Okay. You got to be adding a couple every day on average. And there's going to be days where you're going to get a lot. But you can be searching for specific kinds of people in certain industries or geography. And as long as you've got, a note that you attach to the LinkedIn request, the connection request, people are more likely to respond to you. Cold connecting without explaining why you want to talk to them is not the path that's going to get you more connections. So here's another question that came in. I have had a few panel interviews and they're really tough. And I agree with you, they are. Any suggestions? Well, I think one of the things you want to do in a panel interview, and it could be with 3 people, it could be with 5, they might be from the same department, but in many cases, they might be from very different departments. What you want to do is typically you will get a list of the names of the people that come from, they're going to be a part of this panel. Go into their LinkedIn profile, see if there's anything in their background that connects to you, either professionally or personally. A lot of people put things in the lower portion of their LinkedIn profile that show the things that they do outside of work. whether it's hiking, biking, international travel, golf, any number of things, supporting volunteering their time, supporting underprivileged situations. These are all great things that tell about a person's character. They might have some things that they've done in their past that you've also done or that you've got an affinity for. So I urge you to take really close look at people's entire profiles, because that information can be hugely valuable to help make you a more likable candidate. When you start to connect with people on a personal level, they start to like you more, okay? And we know that the best candidate does not always get the job offer. Oftentimes that the best candidate's resume never was seen, okay? But the person that makes themselves more likable, connects with people on the other end of the interview process, they will always have a greater chance of getting an offer. So I know that there might have been a few more questions in here. If I did not address your question, please don't hesitate to email me at mgilbert@nsenginc.com, and I will get back to you. Okay. A couple quick reminders. The next LinkedIn Live event that I'm going to be doing is going to be on marketing yourself to your next job. It'll take place on Wednesday, July 17th from 12 to 12:30 Central Time. I urge you to put this on your calendar. It's already out there on LinkedIn under the events. You just plug in marketing yourself to your next job and it'll pop up and you can go ahead and register. And by the way, LinkedIn records all of these sessions for me. So even if you cannot attend, you can always go back to the link later and look at the recording, which is exactly what you should tell other folks who couldn't make it today, who are in a job search. Not a problem. They can go back to that link and see a recording of everything that you've all just heard just now. Quick reminder, if you are thinking about the possibility of working with a coach, please don't hesitate to send me an email. I'm happy to set up a free exploratory conversation and tell you about the coaching packages I have and the one-on-one custom coaching services that can be tailored to any aspects of your job search. So please, don't hesitate to reach out to me on that. So if you are not yet a member of NSENG, I urge you to do so. The membership's free. There is no hidden agenda here. If you are not linked in with me, please send me a connection request. Tell me that you attended this session and I will accept your connection. Join our LinkedIn group. It's a great, safe place to talk with other people who are in a search, but also people who have been in one who are landed. Okay, we've had over 3,000 members of the 11,000 plus members in this group land great jobs. Keep an eye on the upcoming events. And of course, the library of webinar and workshop recordings that are either 90 minutes or 3 hours long. They're really valuable. And I can say that a lot of the people that I've coached have taken advantage of some of these recordings, and they said they've completely redone their resume or LinkedIn profile as a result, or completely changed the way in which they were networking. And if you think that you would benefit from working with a job search coach, I will tell you that probably the biggest difference between me and probably 99% of the job search coaches that are out there is that I don't come from an HR or talent recruitment background. And that gives me a huge advantage because my background is primarily marketing and sales. 90% of the job search is marketing, positioning, packaging, messaging, targeting, and rolling out an outbound marketing campaign to companies that have jobs, but also to companies that don't have jobs. I don't expect people that don't have a marketing background to be very strong in marketing. But if you are a believer that those kinds of things are important to your candidacy, that's what makes me different and unique from a lot of other people who are in these kinds of roles. So again, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. Again, if I didn't get to one of your questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at mgilbert@nsenginc.com. And with that, I wish you all a good, productive search. And you don't have to search alone because we've got a lot of people in NSENG that are happy to network with you and potentially open up doors that you can't open on your own. Take care.